looking back on it, it's just so unbelievable. The whole thing, the whole chain of events, everything that happened. It's been hard for me, it's been hard for Jordan, not having her daddy here. He wanted to help people, and if this could help somebody else, then to not have the same thing, I know that's what he would want.
I first met Amy 6 months ago, and I've been thinking about her story every single day since. After that first interview, 5 months went by, and I got a call from the city of Austin telling me, because of information I brought to their attention, the city manager decided to pay a group of police officers thousands of dollars they were denied, including Amy's husband. When I got that call, my heart started beating so fast, just like it is right now. My adrenaline was pumping, and my heart was racing. And when I finally started breathing normally again, I realized, about 2 days later, that's when I started breathing normally again, that this was one of the most rewarding days so far in my 15-year career. Countless hours of investigating, digging for information, uncovering the truth, and then presenting that truth to the one person who had the power to change it, and they did. It's what investigative journalism is all about. And after I had more time to reflect on the process and what led to those results, I kept coming back to this overarching theme of how powerful the word no can be. At least for me, how it served as motivation, as a driving force to look for more answers and get a different outcome. It's like when a door shuts in your face and you think, I am not giving up. This cannot be the final answer. This is a picture of Amy, who you just saw in that interview clip. Here she is with her late husband, Detective Norman Bajanos, and their daughter, Jordan. Amy and I had never met, and she sent me an email, and it grabbed my attention right away. She told me how her husband was a police detective, and he died from a tragic reaction to a prescription drug. I called her almost immediately after I read her email, and she further explained the nightmare that she had gone through. Her husband came home from work one day. He didn't feel well, and he got even sicker, and he came down with what felt like the flu, but it was far worse. Several days went by. He saw a couple of doctors, and eventually he ended up in the emergency room, and his organs were shutting down. Doctors did everything they could to save his life, but it was too late, and he didn't survive. Amy went home totally confused, wondering what the heck just happened to my husband. She got online, like so many of us do, and started looking up information. And she quickly came across a new FDA warning that had just come out 6 months prior for the very prescription medication and side effect that took her husband's life. At no point along the way had any doctor he had seen before he ended up in the hospital say anything about this. There were no red flags. She was coming to me so we could raise awareness about this rare but deadly side effect, and we did. In that first story we worked on together, we talked about how the key is catching it early. We also told our viewers how even more people had died and become sick from this exact side effect. And after that original story, there was another issue Amy had told me about that I wanted to keep digging into further, and so did she. When Amy went to pick up her husband's final paycheck, she noticed it was missing about $29,000. It was sick time pay her late husband was denied. When Norman died, the police department, was not under a contract. They were still trying to negotiate a new one with the city, and so for about a year, any officer who left the department either resigned or retired or in Norman's case died, did not receive their full sick time payout. Months went by, and this kept bugging Amy. She thought maybe if I just share my story with somebody at the city, they'll change their mind. It was not Norman's choice to die. And actually, the department signed a new contract less than 30 days after his death. She felt compelled to go to Norman's boss and say, "Who can I talk to? Maybe somebody will change their mind." He said, "Let me see what I can do." And he took her question and he ran it up the chain. And he came back a few days later. He said, "I'm sorry, Amy. The city attorney's office said no. Rules are rules. And if we make an exception for you, we're going to have to make an exception for every other officer who was denied money as well." This was the first time in Amy's journey when she heard that word no. Yeah, she was disappointed, but Amy is a fighter. And the wheels started turning in her mind, and she said, "Well, who else can we talk to?" She decided to write a letter to the police chief. Maybe he could talk to somebody, maybe he could make a change. So she wrote him an email, but she never heard back. So here we were working together to try to figure out what the next step was going to be. There were some questions that I personally wanted answered. When she told me that the city attorney said, if we make an exception for you, we're going to have to make an exception for the other officers, I wanted to know, who's everyone? How many other officers were denied their sick time? Nobody at the city could answer that question. I even asked the police chief, and he didn't know. Everyone just kept telling me, we don't think it's very many people. So I filed what we call an open records request, hoping to get a list of names, maybe hours they were denied, maybe how much money they didn't get. And several days later, the city sent me a list with 3 names: Norman and 2 other officers. I reached out to those 2 officers, and in talking to them, they were a little confused. They thought, I think there should be more names on this list. I said, okay, that's interesting. So I went back to the city and I said, I'm hearing there should be more names on this list. Less than 24 hours later, they sent me a new list, this time with 9 names, and said, sorry about the confusion. So I reached out to those officers, and over the course of the next several days, I got a couple of tips that 2 people on the list did, in fact, receive their full sick time payout. This was a turning point in the investigation. The 2 people who ended up getting their full sick time payout, they retired and were then rehired by the city. It was a police chief and an assistant police chief. They both were able to work out a deal and negotiate into their new contract a clause that allowed them to get all of their money once the city had signed a new contract. I took this information back to Amy, and she was not a happy camper. Here she was, fighting, asking the city to make an exception, and the answer was no. In fact, in my conversation with the police chief, he never answered her email a few months prior, but I had reached out to him, and he said, I'll try again, I'll go back to the city attorney. And he did, and the answer was still no, but we kept pushing forward. There was also another key piece of information that I learned from the police chief, and he said, I don't have the power to change the decision, but there's one person who does, and that's the city manager. I said, well, I got to get this information in front of the city manager. And in order to request an interview or have any type of communication, you've got to send an email to his office. And so I laid out all of the information that we had uncovered and requested an interview. I didn't hear anything back for a week. And I circled back around. I said, hey, is this interview going to happen? The answer was no. But we're working on a statement that you can include in your story, and we will let you know, or we want to let you know, that the city manager is aware and he's looking into the issue. So now that word no is coming straight at me. And any time in an investigation when you're toward the end and you've got that key person, that one person that you really want to talk to on camera, because we are a TV station, you want it so bad. And when you hear that word no, it just fires you up even more. So I wasn't ready to put this story on the air yet. I thought, what else can we do? Who else can we talk to? So I thought, well, I should probably reach out to the city council. They're the ones that put this no contract period in place in the first place. And maybe they can also, get in the ear of the city manager. So I sent an email to every single city council member and the mayor, laying all of the information out and requesting an interview. And I only heard back from one city almost immediately. She agreed to do an interview. We went to City Hall. We sat down, hit record, and she said, "This is completely unfair. The city has a responsibility and an obligation to take care of the Bajanos family and every single police officer who was denied their benefits." We were ready to put the story on the air at this point. And as we were putting the finishing touches on it, about 4 hours before airtime, my phone rings. And it's that call I told you about from this city, telling me the city manager had made a decision and he agreed this was completely unfair. And the Bajanos family should get every dime they were denied, and every officer who left the department in good standing should get their money too. I hung up, I couldn't believe it, and I knew who I needed to call, and that was Amy, to share the good news. And here's a little bit of that call. Of course, I decided to FaceTime her because I also wanted to see her reaction.
Hey.
Hey, Amy. Are you sitting down? You look like you are.
Yes.
So the big news is you're getting the money.
Yeah, it's just, I'm overwhelmed. But, I was telling someone today, it's just, I feel like I'm going somewhere and everyone's looking at me, and it's hard to go public with this, but I had to because I just felt like it was the right thing to do, and I felt like, that's what he would have wanted me to do.
This is the power of investigative journalism. This is what happens when someone says no and you don't give up. You keep pushing for more answers and you get a different result. When I started thinking about the word no, I thought about when is a time in our life when we start hearing that word a whole lot. And I think about when I was a kid. Think about when you were a child and you went and asked your parents something, and the answer was no. What did you do? I know what I did. I just went and asked the other parent. My parents are in the room, and they're probably nodding their heads right now. When we hear no as a kid, we think somehow, some way we can get a yes, right? We're still pretty optimistic about that. So why is it oftentimes as adults we hear that word no and we're discouraged and we just want to move forward and say, oh well, throw in the towel. I tried. I think about friends who have gone for promotions only to be told you're not the right fit, you don't have enough experience, and instead of believing that no, they work their butts off to land that job and prove their boss wrong. No doesn't have to be a negative thing. It can have the exact opposite effect. In Amy's story, if she would have accepted that first no, even the second no from the city attorney's office, she would have never come to me so we could work together to get to a yes. And now she's getting $29,000. And other officers are getting tens of thousands of dollars too. 3 days ago, Amy texted me and said, I just got a call from the police department. It was the human resources department. They said, Amy, your check is ready. You're going to think this is probably pretty unbelievable. I know I did. She said, Erin, today would have been my and Norman's 20th wedding anniversary. Her day was going pretty rough in the beginning. She couldn't even get out of bed. And when she told me it was their wedding anniversary, I called her. She was in tears, and she said, this is a sign. This was no accident. This is a gift. This is an anniversary gift from Norman. Let the no's serve as motivation. Allow them to light a fire under you to keep working toward that yes. Thank you.